In my most recent live, I spoke about boundaries, and I talked about the fact that I am calling bullshit on the way that the mainstream has taught us boundaries. Basically, we've been taught that we should be able to control how somebody else treats us. If we were powerful enough, if we were badass enough, we could make sure that we are never disrespected again. And I believe that that is really the collective ego speaking to our individual egos and triggering our individual egos into believing and keeping us focused on the outside world rather than where our real power lies, which is the inside world. So I would love us to start thinking about boundaries like this. Obviously, we know that we come with our own energy. And if I'm interacting with somebody else, they come with their own energy. The space that is between me and that other person is the energetic space that we share. And that is a space, the shared space, that we both are responsible for what we put in there. But what we take from that space and we allow to move into our inner space, that is 100% our own responsibility. The way we've been taught boundaries is to place the responsibility on ourselves for being able to control the other person, and then place the responsibility on the other person for what they put into that space and how it makes me feel. And that's the key, how it makes me feel. And yet, if we want to live as sovereign beings, fully in our power, how that makes me feel has to be fully 100% my responsibility. I have to learn how to navigate that. I have to learn how to be in a shared space with somebody, be in a shared space with the collective, and be fully responsible and know how to be in control, in charge, responsible for how I feel with what is placed into that space. And that is boundaries. Boundaries is knowing that I am 100% responsible for what I do with what somebody else places into that shared space, and whether I allow it to come into my area, to the extent that I let it affect my energy, my sense of self, my sense of worth, and my power. I wrote about this in my book, Set the Tone, Nothing Can Change Until You Do. And I gave the example of my pooch, who's now passed away. Her name was Kassy. And I want to share with you the story that I share in the book, because it's the most powerful display of what I've just said to you that I've ever seen. We first encountered Teddy and his owner Maureen one Sunday afternoon. This was before we had our dog Kassy. We stopped to chat and discovered that Teddy had recently been adopted from the pound. From what Maureen knew of his past, it had been rough. Over the next few months, we often ran into Maureen and Teddy, and we always stopped to chat. The first time we encountered them, after adopting Kassy, the previously shy Teddy responded to Kassy with all guns blazing. He barked non-stop in a tone that left no doubt about how he felt in her presence. Respecting this, we kept our distance, staying across the road and yelling hello to each other above the sound of the barking. Maureen tried everything she could to calm Teddy, all to no avail. He didn't seem aggressive, but he was letting Kassy know that he was not going to have her come any closer, not without permanent damage to her hearing anyway. This barking went on for the next 5 years, every time we saw them. It did decrease in severity and extent, such that we were eventually able to stand on the same side of the road. And here's what I found so impressive about the whole scenario. Kassy never reacted to Teddy's barking, not once. In fact, she usually seemed happy to see him. Each time we came across the pair on our walks, she would get a little spring in her step, wagging her tail in excitement, and then sit and be barked at until he calmed down. I found this extraordinary. One day, after watching her not react for the umpteenth time, I realised that Kassy understood that he was frightened and that it had nothing to do with her. She totally understood that this reaction was not personal. While he was being triggered, most likely due to his past experiences, she was just peacefully staying centered and in her power. Now, here was an example of boundaries like I'd never seen before. She knew they weren't ever going to be friends, but she could also encounter him without giving her power away. This show of compassion and regard for someone else's feelings without making it be about her will stay with me for the remainder of my days as an example of a master level of setting the tone. So I'd love you to think about that story. I'd love you to remember it at times when you're triggered, when somebody else is acting out of their fear, when you could take it personally. And I want you to start really shifting into understanding what boundaries really means, activating that, staying in your power, and setting the tone. Much love.